She raised her champagne glass and smiled. You'll never become the kind of man any woman can be proud of. The room erupted in laughter as she pushed divorce papers across the table. But he didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply signed his name, stood up, and quietly walked away. No one realized they had just mocked the man who would one day control the future of the very company she was so proud of. Stay with us. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming someone they can never reach again. She regretted everything. Part 1. The man she was ashamed of. You will never become the kind of man a woman can be proud of. Vanessa Cole did not whisper the words. She said them clearly enough for everyone at the table to hear. The silver chandelier above the private dining room scattered cold light across crystal glasses, polished plates, and the faces of 12 people who suddenly found the arrangement of their cutlery fascinating. At the far end of the table, Ethan Cole sat motionless. His dark suit was clean but old. The fabric at the elbows had begun to soften, and the white shirt beneath it had been washed enough times to lose its sharpness. He had repaired the strap of his watch himself 2 nights earlier. Vanessa had noticed. She always noticed the things that embarrassed her. The dinner had been arranged to celebrate her promotion at Harrington and Vale, one of the largest luxury development companies in the city. Her parents were there. Her colleagues were there. So was Adrian Mercer, the company's executive vice president, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and the comfortable smile of a man who had never entered a room without expecting it to belong to him. Ethan had spent 3 weeks saving for Vanessa's gift. It was a fountain pen engraved with her initials. She had opened the box, looked at it for less than 3 seconds, then placed it beside her plate. Adrian had given her a diamond bracelet. The room had applauded. Ethan's pen remained untouched. Vanessa, her mother said carefully, this may not be the place. No, Vanessa replied, lifting her wineglass. This is exactly the place. Her gaze settled on Ethan. For a brief moment, something passed through his eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Only recognition. He understood that this conversation had happened before tonight. It had happened in the way she stopped introducing him to clients. In the way she called him my husband, without saying his name. In the way she rolled her eyes when he spoke about the logistics platform he had been building after work. It had happened every morning when she stepped into a designer dress and looked at him as if his presence lowered the value of the room. You promised me things would change, she continued. Ethan's fingers rested beside his untouched glass of water. I said I was working on it. You have been working on it for 6 years. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Adrian leaned back in his chair, watching. Vanessa gave a small laugh. You still work in a warehouse office, Ethan. You still drive that rusted car. You still come home smelling like cardboard and machine oil. I am 32 years old. I cannot keep waiting for you to become someone. I thought I already was someone. His voice was quiet. That softness seemed to irritate her more than anger would have. Do you know what people say about us? She asked. They wonder why I married you. Ethan looked down the table. No one met his eyes. Vanessa removed her wedding ring. The movement was slow, deliberate. The thin band slid over her knuckle and landed on the white tablecloth with a sound so small it should not have carried. But it did. It sounded louder than the music from the adjoining ballroom. Louder than the traffic beyond the windows. Louder than the 6 years they had once called a marriage. I am tired of apologizing for you, she said. Ethan looked at the ring. He remembered buying it from a narrow jewelry shop on Westbridge Avenue. He had worked 3 double shifts to afford it. Vanessa had cried when he placed it on her finger beneath a string of cheap lights on the roof of their first apartment. Back then, she had not cared that the diamond was small. Back then, she had kissed him as if love were wealth enough. A waiter entered with dessert, sensed the atmosphere, and quietly left again. Vanessa pushed a folder across the table. Divorce papers. Already prepared. Already signed. Ethan stared at them for a long moment. Was any of it real? He asked. She blinked, perhaps surprised that this was the question he chose. It was real when I believed in you. And now I see you clearly. Adrian reached for his wine. Vanessa's father lowered his head. Ethan opened the folder. He read the first page, although the words blurred after the second line. The agreement left him with little beyond his car, his laptop, and the savings account, containing less than $4,000. The apartment would remain hers. The furniture would remain hers. Most of their friends, he already knew, would remain hers too. He picked up the pen Vanessa had set aside, the one engraved with her initials. With it, He signed the divorce papers. Her face changed for a second. Perhaps she had expected resistance. Perhaps she had wanted him to beg. But Ethan simply closed the folder and pushed it back. Then he stood. Adrian smiled faintly. "Good luck," he said. Ethan looked at him. There was no threat in his expression. No humiliation. No plea. Only a stillness Adrian did not understand. "Take care of what you chose," Ethan said. He turned to Vanessa. The chandelier reflected in her diamond bracelet. For one heartbeat, the room disappeared, and he saw the young woman from the rooftop again. The girl who had once eaten noodles from the same bowl with him because they could not afford 2 dinners. Then she lifted her chin. That girl was gone. Ethan picked up his coat. He left the ring on the table. Outside, rain moved across the city in silver lines. He had no umbrella. By the time he reached the parking garage, his shirt was wet beneath his jacket. Water ran down his face, hiding what might have been tears. He sat inside his old car, but did not start the engine. For almost an hour, he remained there with both hands on the steering wheel. The restaurant lights glowed above him. Somewhere inside, people were probably speaking again. Glasses were being refilled. Vanessa was being comforted. Adrian was likely standing close enough for everyone to understand what came next. Ethan closed his eyes. Her sentence returned. "You will never become the kind of man a woman can be proud of." He had built his life around proving his love to her. He had delayed his dreams when she went to graduate school. He had taken the warehouse job because it offered insurance. He had spent nights developing his software after she fell asleep, only to close the laptop whenever she complained about the light. For years, he had confused sacrifice with devotion. Now, in the darkness of the parking garage, he finally understood the difference. Love could ask for patience. It should never require self-erasure. Ethan started the car. The engine coughed twice before coming alive. He drove into the rain without looking back. And upstairs, beneath the chandelier, Vanessa slipped Adrian's diamond bracelet higher on her wrist and told herself she felt free. She did not yet know that one day she would remember the sound of Ethan's footsteps leaving that room. She would remember them more clearly than the applause, more clearly than the music, more clearly than anything she had gained that night. Because years later, when the whole city stood for the man she had discarded, those footsteps would return to her like a verdict, and she would regret everything. Part 2. The empty apartment. The apartment Ethan rented after the divorce was above a 24-hour laundromat. The floor trembled whenever the industrial dryers entered their final cycle. The pipes groaned at night. The single window faced a brick wall stained dark by decades of rain. There was no bedroom, only a narrow mattress near the radiator, a folding table, a second-hand chair, and 3 cardboard boxes containing what remained of his life. He unpacked them slowly. Clothes, books, a chipped coffee mug, a framed photograph from his wedding. He held the photograph beneath the yellow kitchen light. Vanessa stood beside him in a simple ivory dress, laughing into the wind. Ethan had one arm around her waist. They looked young enough to believe that happiness, once found, stayed. He removed the photograph from the frame. For a moment, he considered tearing it. Instead, he placed it face down in the lowest drawer. The next morning, he went to work. No one at the warehouse knew how to speak to him. His supervisor, Mr. Delaney, offered 3 clumsy sentences about life continuing. 2 co-workers avoided mentioning Vanessa entirely. One man slapped Ethan on the shoulder and suggested a bar where divorced men could meet women who didn't ask questions. Ethan thanked him and returned to his desk. His job involved tracking delayed shipments, correcting inventory errors, and explaining to angry clients why their goods had disappeared between one warehouse and another. The company's systems were outdated. Every department used different software. Drivers carried paper manifests. Managers relied on spreadsheets that crashed without warning. Ethan saw patterns in the confusion. For years, he had been building a platform that could connect warehouses, drivers, ports, and retailers in real time. A predictive system that identified delays before they happened. A network that could learn from disruptions and redirect shipments automatically. He called it North Star. Vanessa had called it a hobby. After work, Ethan returned to the apartment and opened his laptop. The screen was cracked along one corner. The cooling fan rattled. Some nights it overheated before midnight, forcing him to place it beside the open window while winter air entered the room. He worked anyway. At first, grief made concentration impossible. He would write 3 lines of code, then stare at the cursor for 20 minutes. He would hear Vanessa's laughter in the humming of the refrigerator. He would imagine her stepping into Adrian's car. He would wonder whether she had ever loved him or only loved the possibility of what he might become. At 2 in the morning, he sometimes opened her contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. He never pressed it. He did not beg. He did not send accusations. He did not tell the world what she had done. Pain remained inside him, dense and private. During the day, he carried it beneath his shirt like a hidden wound. At night, he placed it beside the keyboard and worked. Weeks became months. The laundromat shook the floor. Rain struck the window. Ethan wrote code until sunrise. He learned what he did not know. He studied supply chain forecasting, machine learning, port scheduling, and transportation law. He listened to university lectures while eating canned soup. He wrote business plans during lunch breaks and tested prototypes using anonymized warehouse data. There were evenings when he slept in the chair. There were mornings when he woke with keyboard marks pressed into his cheek. The divorce became final in February. Vanessa arrived at the courthouse wearing a cream coat Ethan had bought her the previous Christmas. Adrian waited near the entrance. Ethan noticed but said nothing. Inside, the judge asked whether reconciliation was possible. Vanessa answered first. No, the word came quickly. Ethan looked at her profile. Perfect hair. Perfect makeup. No hesitation. No, he repeated. The judge signed the order. 6 years became a file number. Outside the courtroom, Vanessa paused beside him. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then she looked at his worn shoes. I hope you find something realistic to do with your life, she said. Ethan held the envelope containing the final decree. I already have. She seemed almost offended by his calm. Ethan, I am not trying to hurt you. He looked at her. That was the first time she stepped back. You stopped trying a long time ago, he said. Adrian called her name from the hall. Vanessa turned. Ethan walked in the opposite direction. That evening, he did not return to the apartment immediately. He went to the river. The city rose around him in glass and steel, each tower carrying the name of someone who had once been told no. He stood beneath a bridge while traffic moved overhead. His father had brought him there when he was a boy. See those buildings? His father had said. Every light means someone is still working. At the time, Ethan had imagined the people inside as giants. Now he understood they were only people who had stayed awake long after others stopped believing. He returned home and opened North Star. For the first time, he deleted Vanessa's initials from the original project file. Not because he hated her, because the dream no longer belonged to the man who had tried to earn her approval. It belonged to him. 3 months later, Ethan resigned from the warehouse. Mr. Delaney stared at the letter. You have another job? No, investors? Not yet. A rich uncle? Ethan smiled. No, Mr. Delaney removed his glasses. Then what do you have? Ethan looked through the office window at the warehouse floor below. Forklifts moved between towering shelves. Workers shouted over reversing alarms. A driver held a paper manifest and argued with a dispatcher. 1,000 inefficiencies. 1,000 opportunities. I have a system that can fix this, Ethan said. Mr. Delaney studied him for a long time. Then he reached into his drawer and pulled out a key. It belonged to an unused storage room behind the warehouse. You can work there after hours, he said, until someone notices. Ethan closed his hand around the key. It was the first investment North Star ever received. Not money, belief. He shook Mr. Delaney's hand. That night, he moved his folding table into the storage room. The space smelled of dust, wood, and machine oil. There were no windows. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead. Ethan placed his laptop on the table. Beside it, he set the fountain pen engraved with Vanessa's initials. He had kept it without knowing why. He turned the initials away from him. Then he began. Outside the storage room door, the warehouse slowly emptied. The forklift stopped. The loading bays closed. The city went dark one building at a time. But behind that door, Ethan's screen remained bright. The pain did not disappear. It changed shape. It became discipline. It became patience. It became the quiet engine of a future no one else could see. Part 3. The 3 people who believed North Star began with 4 people. Ethan, a programmer named Maya Chun, who had been fired from a technology firm after refusing to falsify a performance report. A former truck driver named Luis Ortega, whose left knee had been shattered in an accident caused by a scheduling error. And Samuel Reed, a retired accountant who wore the same brown coat every day and treated every dollar as if it were the last one on earth. Their first office was the storage room. Their first conference table was a shipping pallet covered with plywood. Their first coffee machine leaked. Maya joined because Ethan showed her the prototype and admitted exactly what did not work. Louise joined because the software predicted a route closure 12 hours before the official warning reached his old company. Samuel joined because he reviewed Ethan's financial plan, looked up, and said, "This is either brilliant or suicidal." Ethan asked which one he believed. Samuel shrugged. "At my age, either is more interesting than retirement." They worked without salaries for 4 months. Maya slept beneath her desk twice. Louise drove across 3 states to persuade small warehouse owners to test the system. Samuel negotiated with creditors using a voice so calm that people often agreed to terms before realizing how little money Northstar had. Ethan did everything else. He coded. He sold. He answered support calls. He cleaned the office. He carried equipment upstairs when they eventually moved into a room above a closed bakery. Rejection arrived daily. Investors called the market too crowded. Executives said the system was too ambitious. Consultants recommended that Ethan sell the technology to a larger company and accept a comfortable position. One investor leaned across a polished table and asked, "What makes you think you are qualified to build this?" Ethan thought of the warehouse. He thought of thousands of delayed shipments, exhausted drivers, lost products, and managers working with systems designed decades earlier. He thought of Vanessa telling him to be realistic. "I have spent 10 years watching the problem from the inside," he said. "You have spent 10 minutes looking at my slides." The meeting ended soon after. They received no investment. On the train home, Maya sat across from him, holding the rejection letter. "You know," she said, "most founders pretend rejection does not bother them. It bothers me. You do not look bothered. I am trying not to make it everyone else's problem." She folded the letter. "That is either leadership or emotional damage. Probably both." She laughed. It was the first time Ethan had laughed in months. Northstar's breakthrough did not come from a major corporation. It came from a small regional grocery distributor named Bellwether Foods. A winter storm had closed 2 highways and threatened to spoil nearly $8 million in refrigerated goods. Platform. It is not for sale. Everything is for sale. Then you are calling the wrong company. There was a pause. How much to use it? That contract paid Northstar's debts. The next one allowed them to hire 12 employees. The third placed the company's name in an industry magazine. Growth came slowly, then all at once. Within 2 years, Northstar moved into a renovated factory near the river. Within 3, it managed logistics for manufacturers across 11 states. Within 4, international shipping firms began calling. Ethan rarely gave interviews. He avoided cameras. He attended meetings, signed contracts, and returned to the office. Business magazines began referring to him as the invisible founder. His employees called him Ethan. He still drank coffee from the chipped mug he had brought from the apartment above the laundromat. The company changed. He did too. His suits became better, though always dark and simple. The old car disappeared after Louise refused to ride in it again. The apartment above the laundromat was replaced by a quiet townhouse near the river, furnished with wood, linen, and almost nothing unnecessary. But Ethan's habits remained. He arrived before sunrise. He read every customer complaint. He remembered the names of security guards. He ate in the employee cafeteria. When Northstar received its first billion-dollar valuation, the board organized a celebration. Ethan stayed for 20 minutes. Then he returned to his office and reviewed a route failure in Ohio. Maya found him there. She placed a glass of champagne beside his keyboard. "You know the company is worth $1 billion now. So I heard. You could look happier." "I am happy. You look like someone informed you that the printer is working." Ethan leaned back. Beyond the glass wall, hundreds of employees moved through the building. Engineers, analysts, drivers, dispatchers, people who had mortgages, children, illnesses, hopes. Northstar was no longer a private answer to a private wound. It had become responsibility. "That number can disappear," he said. "These people cannot." Maya studied him. "Do you ever think about her?" Ethan did not ask who. Sometimes the answer was no. Sometimes he saw a cream coat in a crowd and remembered the courthouse. Sometimes he passed the restaurant where Vanessa had removed her ring. The memory no longer cut as deeply, but scar tissue still recognized weather. Less often, he said. Do you know what happened to her? No, that was not entirely true. He knew pieces. Harrington and Vale had expanded aggressively under Adrian Mercer. Vanessa had become director of strategic partnerships. Her name appeared in business publications beside photographs of luxury hotels, waterfront towers, and international galas. 3 years after the divorce, she married Adrian in Italy. Ethan saw the announcement on a screen in an airport lounge. He looked at it for 5 seconds. Then his flight was called. 2 years later, Adrian was investigated for misusing company funds. The investigation disappeared. The marriage did not survive. Ethan heard about the divorce from Samuel, who mentioned it while reviewing a potential acquisition. Ethan had simply turned the page. Vanessa had once been the center of his life. Now she was a name in a document. He did not feel triumph. He felt distance. That distance became complete on the morning North Star purchased Sterling Global, a struggling international infrastructure company with ports, warehouses, and transportation networks across 3 continents. The acquisition transformed Ethan's company into one of the largest logistics groups in the world. It also gave North Star control over several major contracts belonging to Harrington and Vale. For the first time in years, Vanessa's world and Ethan's future moved toward the same room. The Harrington board requested emergency investment. Their debt had become unsustainable. Adrian's decisions had left the company exposed. 2 foreign partners had withdrawn. A flagship coastal project stood unfinished beneath rusting cranes. Sterling Global could save them. Or buy them. Ethan reviewed the file without emotion. Maya watched from the other side of the table. You know she works there? Yes. You could remove yourself from the decision. I could. Will you? Ethan closed the file. No, Maya's eyebrows lifted. Because you want revenge. He looked toward the windows. Below them, the river carried black barges through the morning fog. No, he said. Because thousands of people work there, and they did not make her choices. That evening, the board approved negotiations. A formal acquisition gala was scheduled at the Grand Marlowe Hotel. Harrington and Vale would announce a rescue agreement with Sterling Global. The identity of Sterling's new owner had been kept private during regulatory review. Most of the press knew only that he was the founder of North Star and one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the industry. Few photographs of him existed. Vanessa had not seen any of them. When the invitation arrived on her desk, she ran her fingers across the embossed silver letters. Sterling Global Acquisition Gala. She saw salvation. A chance to preserve her position. A chance to rebuild the reputation Adrian had damaged. A chance to stand beside power again. She did not know the man behind Sterling already knew the sound of her footsteps. He remembered the restaurant. He remembered the ring. He remembered the sentence she had thrown across the table. And for the first time since the divorce, Ethan opened the drawer in his study and removed the old fountain pen engraved with her initials. The ink had dried years ago. He held it beneath the light. Then he placed it in the inner pocket of his jacket. Not as a weapon, as a reminder. He had survived the man who once needed her approval. Now he was going to meet the woman who had never imagined he could live without it. Part 4. The life she chose. Vanessa's office occupied the 38th floor of Harrington Tower. From her windows, the city looked obedient. Cars became silver lines. People became moving dots. Problems became distant enough to seem small. For years, she had loved the view. It made her feel elevated above the version of herself she feared most. The girl from a narrow house in a poor neighborhood, wearing secondhand shoes and pretending not to notice when classmates laughed. Vanessa had not always been cruel. She had been afraid. As a child, she learned that poverty entered a room before a person did. It appeared in frayed cuffs, expired coupons, unpaid bills, and the careful way her mother counted coins at the grocery store. Her father worked 2 jobs and still came home apologizing. Vanessa promised herself she would never need anyone who could not protect her from that life. Then she met Ethan. He had no money, but he listened. He remembered details. He believed her ambitions were beautiful rather than excessive. When she studied late, he brought tea. When she received her first internship rejection, he sat beside her on the kitchen floor until she stopped crying. When she entered graduate school, he took the warehouse position because the health insurance covered them both. At first, she called it love. Later, she called it limitation. The change happened gradually. Her new colleagues wore watches worth more than Ethan's yearly salary. They traveled without checking prices. They spoke about wealth as if it were evidence of character. Vanessa began measuring her life through their eyes. Ethan's patience became lack of ambition. His caution became weakness. His old car became humiliation. His devotion became something she could spend without gratitude. Adrian noticed the fracture. He praised her, invited her to private dinners, told her she deserved a man whose life matched her potential. By the time Vanessa removed her ring, she had already rewritten the marriage in her mind. Ethan was not the man who had supported her. He was the man holding her back. Adrian was not a married executive exploiting her resentment. He was proof she had outgrown her past. For a while, the illusion held. Adrian gave her the apartment she had once pointed to in a magazine. He took her to Monaco, Milan, Singapore. He introduced her to ministers, celebrities, and investors. Their wedding appeared in 3 magazines. Vanessa wore a dress hand-stitched in Paris. Guests released white lanterns above an Italian lake. In the photographs, she looked victorious. But Adrian's attention was a spotlight, not warmth. It moved wherever power moved. He admired Vanessa when she impressed people. He dismissed her when she disagreed with him. He treated loyalty as a service purchased through luxury. 2 years into the marriage, Vanessa found messages from another woman. Adrian did not apologize. He only asked why Vanessa had been looking at his phone. When she threatened to leave, he laughed. "Leave for what?" he said. "Another warehouse clerk." The words struck harder than she expected. Not because they insulted Ethan, because Vanessa hurt herself inside them. She stayed another year. By then, Harrington and Vale was collapsing. Adrian had borrowed against unfinished developments, concealed losses, and moved money through consulting firms controlled by friends. When the board discovered the damage, he resigned before they could remove him. He left Vanessa too. The penthouse belonged to a holding company. The accounts were frozen. The friends who once crowded their dining room stopped calling. For the second time in her life, Vanessa packed her belongings into boxes. This time, no one helped her carry them. She rented an apartment with white walls and no view. At night, she heard the elevator cables moving through the building. The sound reminded her of the laundromat Ethan had once described. She had never visited that apartment. She had known where he lived. She had simply never gone. Now, 5 years after the divorce, she sometimes imagined climbing those stairs. She imagined finding him at a folding table, surrounded by papers, his shoulders bent beneath exhaustion. Had he waited for her? Had he hoped she would knock? The questions arrived after midnight, when ambition could no longer distract her. She searched for him once. His old social media accounts were inactive. The warehouse said he had left years earlier. A business database listed an Ethan Cole connected to North Star Systems, but the profile contained no photograph. The company's valuation made the idea seem absurd. Her Ethan had been intelligent, yes, but billions belonged to another species of man. Men like Adrian. Men who entered rooms with certainty. Men who did not repair their own watches. Vanessa closed the page. At work, the crisis deepened. Harrington employees whispered about layoffs. Contractors stopped construction. The board scheduled emergency meetings. Then Sterling Global appeared. The rescue offer came with severe conditions: executive restructuring, independent audits, protection for workers, and the removal of several senior leaders. Vanessa's division would be reviewed. Her future depended on the new owner. She prepared obsessively for the gala. She researched Sterling Global's history. She memorized acquisition figures. She reviewed every known statement from the mysterious North Star founder. There were no recent photographs, only descriptions. Private, disciplined, unusually loyal to employees, known for buying failing companies and rebuilding them rather than stripping their assets. Some journalists called him ruthless. Others called him principled. Vanessa read one sentence several times. He is said to remember every person who believed in him before success made belief convenient. Something about it unsettled her. On the evening of the gala, she stood before the mirror in a black silk dress. It was elegant, restrained, and expensive enough to suggest stability. She fastened diamond earrings Adrian had given her, then removed them. For several seconds, she looked at the bare places where they had been. She replaced them with small pearl studs. The woman in the mirror appeared composed. Only her hands betrayed her. They shook while fastening the clasp. At 7:30, a car took her to the Grand Marlowe. Rain had begun to fall. The hotel entrance glowed beneath gold awnings. Cameras flashed. Executives stepped from black vehicles and walked across the red carpet beneath umbrellas held by attendants. Vanessa entered the ballroom beneath a ceiling painted with clouds. A string quartet played near the stage. Waiters carried champagne. On a giant screen, silver letters announced, a new ERA for Harrington and Vale in partnership with Sterling Global. Vanessa moved through the crowd, smiling when required. She spoke to board members, reassured nervous employees, accepted compliments she did not hear. Everyone was waiting for the new owner. Rumors moved from group to group. He had arrived from London. He was younger than expected. He had declined the presidential suite. He had requested a private meeting with worker representatives before speaking to the board. Vanessa felt an unfamiliar tension. Not fear exactly. Recognition without a face. At 8:15, the ballroom doors opened. A man entered alone. He wore a black suit without visible branding. His hair was shorter than she remembered. His posture had changed. The slight forward bend of a man accustomed to apologizing had disappeared. For one impossible second, Vanessa did not know him. Then he turned. The room narrowed. Sound receded. Her champagne glass became cold between her fingers. Ethan. He looked older. Not tired. Finished. As if someone had removed every uncertain line from him and left only stillness. Vanessa stared. He could not belong here. Perhaps he was a consultant. A systems manager. A guest connected to the warehouse division. She repeated the possibilities until one became believable. Then Ethan's eyes met hers. No shock appeared in them. No pain. He had known she would be there. Vanessa lifted her chin. Old habits arrived before wisdom. She crossed the room. Every step carried her back toward the restaurant, the courthouse, and the life she had abandoned. But pride kept moving her forward. When she stopped before him, Ethan glanced briefly at the pearl earrings. He remembered them. He had bought them for her 28th birthday from a small shop near the river. Vanessa mistook the glance for uncertainty. She smiled. Well, she said, this is unexpected. Ethan said nothing. She looked at his suit. At least you finally learned how to dress. A nearby executive laughed softly. The sound gave Vanessa courage she did not deserve. I am surprised they let you into a place like this, she added. The executive laughed again. Ethan adjusted the cuff of his shirt. His expression did not change. But something in his silence made Vanessa's smile feel too wide. What are you doing here? She asked. Before Ethan could answer, the lights dimmed. The quartet stopped. A voice from the stage invited everyone to take their places. Ethan looked past Vanessa toward the front of the ballroom. Then he stepped around her. No explanation. No defense. No need. Vanessa watched him walk toward the reserved seats beside the stage. One by one, senior board members stood to greet him. The laughter behind her died. And beneath the painted clouds of the ballroom ceiling, the first crack appeared in the life Vanessa had spent years pretending not to regret. Part 5. The name on the screen. The chairman of Harrington and Vale stepped onto the stage. Arthur Bell was 71 years old and had spent 4 decades speaking to rooms full of powerful people. That night, however, his hands trembled slightly as he arranged the pages on the lectern. Behind him, the screen displayed images of ports, towers, distribution centers, and construction sites. Vanessa remained near the center of the ballroom. She had forgotten to sit. A woman beside her whispered, "Is that him?" Vanessa did not answer. On stage, Arthur cleared his throat. Tonight marks more than an acquisition. It marks the survival of a company that employs over 18,000 people. Applause moved uncertainly through the room. Vanessa looked toward Ethan. He sat in the front row beside Maya Chun, whose face Vanessa recognized from technology articles. On Ethan's other side sat ministers, investors, and labor representatives. No one treated him like an employee. No one treated him like a guest. They leaned toward him when he spoke. They waited when he moved. Vanessa's heartbeat began to pound against her ribs. Arthur continued. 5 years ago, North Star Systems operated from a converted storage room with 4 people and 1 regional client. Images appeared on the screen. A small office. A shipping pallet used as a table. A younger Ethan standing beside 3 exhausted employees. Vanessa's fingers loosened around her glass. 5 years ago, the year of the divorce. The screen changed. North Star's expansion. International contracts. Automated ports. Humanitarian supply networks. A headline announcing a $40 billion valuation. Then Ethan's name filled the screen. Ethan Cole, founder and chief executive officer, Northstar Holdings owner, Sterling Global. The room stood. The applause began near the stage and swept backward like thunder. Vanessa did not move. Her glass shook. A thin line of champagne spilled across her hand. Arthur smiled toward the front row. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man whose vision made tonight possible. Ethan rose. He buttoned his jacket. Then he walked toward the stage. The crowd applauded harder. Vanessa saw Mr. Delaney near the front, the warehouse supervisor who had once attended their backyard barbecues. He was wearing a new suit and wiping his eyes. She saw Luis Ortega, standing proudly beside a group of drivers. She saw Samuel Reed, older now, applauding with both hands. These were people who had known Ethan while she was calling him a failure. They had seen something she had refused to see. As Ethan passed Vanessa, he did not look at her. That absence struck deeper than anger. For years, she had imagined that if they met again, his eyes would accuse her. Perhaps he would be bitter. Perhaps he would want her to see what she had lost. But there was no message in his face. She was not the center of this moment. She was barely inside it. Ethan reached the stage. The applause slowly faded. He looked across the ballroom. His voice, when he began, was calm. Companies often describe acquisitions as victories. The room listened. But buildings do not lose when businesses fail. People do. On the screen behind him appeared photographs of Harrington construction workers, engineers, accountants, designers, and maintenance staff. Sterling Global did not enter this agreement to preserve titles, protect reputations, or reward the decisions that created this crisis. We entered because 18,000 employees should not pay for the arrogance of a few executives. Vanessa lowered her eyes. Around her, several board members shifted. The restructuring will be difficult, Ethan continued. There will be investigations. There will be accountability. But there will also be protection for pensions, wages, and active projects. Applause rose again. This time it came from employees, not investors. Ethan waited. Power is not proven by how many people stand when you enter a room. It is proven by how many people are still standing after your decisions. Vanessa felt the sentence enter the spaces she had spent years defending. She saw Ethan at the dinner table, wet from the rain. She saw the pen beside her plate. She saw herself laughing at his old suit. On stage, Ethan introduced the transition team. Maya would oversee technology integration. Luis would lead transportation reform. Samuel would chair the independent financial audit. Then Arthur returned to sign the final agreement. Cameras flashed as Ethan placed a fountain pen on the table. Vanessa recognized it immediately. Black lacquer. Silver clip. Her initials engraved along the side. VC. The pen she had rejected. The pen Ethan had used to sign their divorce papers. He uncapped it. For one suspended moment, Vanessa thought he might look at her. He did not. He signed the acquisition agreement. The room erupted. That small movement closed a circle only the two of them could understand. Once, the pen had ended their marriage. Now it transferred control of her company into his hands. Vanessa felt suddenly unsteady. She placed the champagne glass on a passing tray before she dropped it. After the ceremony, the ballroom filled with movement. Reporters surrounded the stage. Employees approached Ethan. Board members formed lines to shake his hand. Vanessa stayed near a marble column. Her colleague Claire appeared beside her. "You know him," Claire said. It was not a question. Vanessa watched Ethan speak with a group of maintenance workers. "He was my husband." Claire stared. "Your husband?" "Ex-husband." The word tasted different now. Across the room, Arthur Bell touched Ethan's shoulder and introduced him to a foreign minister. Claire looked from Ethan to Vanessa. "You never said." There was nothing to say. Even Vanessa heard the lie. Claire's expression changed. Not judgment. Something worse. Understanding. "You thought he was unsuccessful." Vanessa's throat tightened. "He was." The answer came automatically. But the man on the stage made it sound ridiculous. Claire was silent. Vanessa looked at Ethan again. "No," she whispered. "I thought he was." The gala continued around her. Music resumed. Champagne flowed. Contracts were discussed. A future was being constructed in the same room where Vanessa's past had just risen before her. For the first time, she understood that Ethan had not transformed into someone else. The qualities now celebrated by billionaires and ministers had always been there. Patience, discipline, restraint, vision. She had mistaken quietness for weakness because the world she admired rewarded noise. She had confused expensive things with valuable people. And when Ethan had needed one person to believe before the evidence appeared, she had chosen to humiliate him instead. A reporter approached. "Ms. Cole, may we ask about your role in the transition?" Vanessa arranged her face. Professional instinct took over. "My team is committed to supporting Sterling Global's vision." The reporter thanked her and moved away. Vanessa almost laughed. Sterling Global's vision. Ethan's vision. The hobby she had complained about. The glowing laptop she had told him to close. The idea she had called unrealistic. It now controlled the company beneath her feet. Near the stage, Ethan finally looked across the room. Their eyes met. Vanessa expected triumph. There was none. Only a quiet acknowledgement. He saw her. He remembered. And he had moved beyond both. She turned away first. In the ladies' room, Vanessa locked herself inside a marble stall. The sound that left her chest was small and broken. She pressed one hand against her mouth. For years, she had told herself she left because Ethan had no future. Now the truth stood beneath chandeliers while the city applauded him. She had not left because he lacked a future. She had left because she had lacked faith. Worse, she had lacked kindness. And no amount of regret could return her to the moment before the ring touched the table. Part 6. The audit. The weeks after the gala stripped Harrington and Veil of illusion. Sterling Global auditors entered every department. Contracts were reopened. Accounts were frozen. Executives who had spent years behind polished doors were called into glass conference rooms and asked questions they could not charm away. Vanessa's division faced intense scrutiny. She had not stolen money. She had not participated in Adrian's fraudulent transfers. But she had ignored warning signs. She had approved partnerships based on Adrian's assurances. She had dismissed employees who raised concerns. Ambition had not made her criminal. It had made her willing not to see. Ethan attended the first major review. Vanessa entered the conference room carrying 3 binders and found him seated at the head of the table. Maya sat to his right. Samuel sat beside a stack of financial reports. There were no cameras. No applause. Only daylight through the windows and the low hum of the ventilation system. "Ms. Cole," Samuel said, "please sit." Vanessa took the chair opposite Ethan. For 2 hours, they examined her decisions. Every approval. Every ignored memorandum. Every project that had exceeded its budget. Ethan asked precise questions without cruelty. That made them harder to answer. "Did you review the independent risk report before approving the Valmir development?" "No, why not?" Adrian said the report was outdated. "Was Adrian responsible for independent risk analysis?" "No." "Then why did his opinion override the report?" Vanessa looked at the page before her. "Because I trusted him." Ethan's gaze remained steady. Was that trust professional? The room became very quiet. "No," she said. He moved to the next question. There was no satisfaction in his voice. No attempt to embarrass her. Had he punished her publicly, she might have defended herself. His fairness left nowhere to hide. At the end of the review, Samuel closed the file. "There is no evidence of financial misconduct by Ms. Cole," he said. "There is substantial evidence of negligent oversight." Vanessa's hands folded tightly in her lap. Maya looked at Ethan. The final decision belonged to him. He removed his glasses. "Your executive title will be suspended," he said. "You may accept a 6-month reassignment under the transition team. You will work directly with project employees and assist in correcting the contracts you approved." Vanessa stared at him. It was a demotion, a severe one, but not dismissal. "Why?" she asked. Samuel frowned slightly. Ethan understood the real question. Why had he not destroyed her? "Because the evidence supports accountability," he said, "not vengeance." The words landed between them. Vanessa felt heat rise behind her eyes. She looked down before anyone saw. "I accept." Her new office was on the 14th floor. There was no city view. The desk had scratches. The fluorescent light flickered when the air conditioner started. For the first time in years, Vanessa worked beside junior analysts and project coordinators. She visited construction sites. She met contractors whose invoices had gone unpaid. She sat with families of workers who feared losing healthcare coverage. The company she had once understood through presentations now had faces. A steelworker named Ben showed her photographs of the house he was trying to keep. A single mother in accounting explained how 2 months without salary would force her children to change schools. A site manager described reporting safety violations that Adrian's office had ignored. Vanessa listened. Really listened. Each story revealed the distance she had created between decisions and consequences. Ethan visited the sites too. He wore a hard hat and work boots. He asked workers what systems failed. He ate lunch from a paper container on the steps of an unfinished building. People trusted him because he did not pretend leadership kept his shoes clean. Vanessa watched from a distance. One afternoon, rain stopped construction early. She found Ethan inside a temporary office reviewing plans. Water moved down the plastic windows. For several seconds, she stood at the door. He looked up. "Do you need something?" The formality hurt. "Yes." She entered. On the table lay photographs of structural damage caused by rushed construction. Vanessa closed the door. "I owe you an apology." Ethan returned his attention to the plans. "You do not have to do this here. I have been trying to find a place where it would not sound calculated. There may not be one." She accepted the blow. "I know." Rain struck the metal roof. Vanessa stepped closer. "I was cruel to you." Ethan said nothing. "I told myself I was being honest. I told myself you needed ambition. But the truth is, I needed everyone around me to prove I had escaped where I came from." He lifted his eyes. She continued before courage failed. "You loved me when I had nothing impressive to offer. Then when I became successful, I treated you as if your sacrifices were evidence of failure." A muscle moved in Ethan's jaw. Vanessa's voice weakened. "You gave me years of your life. I chose to, and I punished you for it." "Yes." The simplicity of the answer broke something inside her. She looked toward the rain-covered window. "I saw the apartment address in the divorce records. I knew where you were." Ethan remained still. "I never came." "No, I thought if I came, you would ask me to stay." "Would you have?" Vanessa closed her eyes. "At the time? No. Then it is better you did not come." She looked at him. "How can you say that so calmly?" "Because I have had years to answer questions you are only beginning to ask." The rain intensified. Vanessa's throat tightened. "Did you hate me?" "For a while I tried." "Could you?" "No." Hope rose before she could stop it. Ethan saw it. His expression changed, not with tenderness, but warning. Not hating someone is not the same as wanting them back. The hope died. Vanessa nodded slowly. "I understand." But she did not. Not yet. She placed a folded piece of paper on the table. It was a copy of the handwritten note Ethan had placed inside the fountain pen box years earlier. "For every future you build, I will always believe in you." Vanessa had found it inside an old jewelry drawer after Adrian left. She had kept it hidden. Now she slid it toward him. "You wrote this to me on the night I stopped believing in you." Ethan looked at the note. He did not touch it. "That man believed love meant disappearing behind someone else's dream," he said. "I do not want to become him again." Vanessa wiped one tear before it reached her cheek. "I am sorry." "I know. Does that matter?" "Yes." She waited. "But it does not change the outcome," he finished. Outside, thunder moved across the construction site. Vanessa left the office alone. For the first time, she understood that apology was not a key. It did not reopen every door. Sometimes it only allowed a person to stand honestly before the door they had closed and admit that what waited on the other side was no longer theirs. Part 7. The woman beside him. The rumors began 3 months later. Ethan Cole was seen leaving a charity dinner with Dr. Elena Marlowe, founder of a global emergency medicine network. Elena was known for opening mobile hospitals in disaster zones and refusing awards that did not include funding. She was elegant without performance, intelligent without cruelty. When reporters asked whether she and Ethan were together, she smiled and said, "We are both very busy people who occasionally remember to eat dinner." The photographs spread anyway. Vanessa saw one on her phone during lunch. Ethan stood beside Elena beneath the entrance of a museum. He was holding an umbrella over her while rain darkened one shoulder of his own coat. The gesture was familiar. During the first years of their marriage, Ethan had always walked on the side closest to traffic. Vanessa had stopped noticing. Now the photograph felt like a memory given to another woman. She locked her phone. Across the table, Ben continued explaining a contractor dispute. Vanessa forced herself to listen. Her 6-month reassignment changed her in ways humiliation never had. She stopped wearing clothes selected to intimidate. She began arriving early. She learned the names of assistants. She corrected problems without making sure executives knew she had solved them. At the end of the transition period, Ethan offered her a permanent role as Director of Ethical Partnerships. The title was lower than her former position. The work carried more responsibility. Vanessa accepted. "Thank you," she said. Ethan nodded. Their conversations remained professional. That distance became a form of mercy. Sterling Global completed the Harrington restructuring within a year. Projects reopened. Pensions were protected. Former executives faced prosecution. Thousands of jobs survived. The company prepared a final ceremony at the coastal development that had once symbolized its collapse. The unfinished towers now stood complete above the sea. Public gardens replaced the private marina Adrian had planned. Affordable housing occupied 2 of the buildings. A medical center operated in partnership with Elena's organization. Vanessa had negotiated the agreement. On the morning of the ceremony, she walked through the gardens before guests arrived. Wind moved through the young trees. Children chased each other near the fountains. The place no longer resembled the monument to wealth Adrian had imagined. It was useful, alive. Vanessa found Ethan near the seawall. He was speaking with Elena. She wore a pale blue coat, her dark hair moving in the wind. Ethan listened while she explained something with animated hands. Then he laughed. Vanessa stopped. She remembered that laugh. Not the polite version used in boardrooms. The real one. The one that changed his whole face. A sharp ache moved through her, but it was cleaner than jealousy. It carried recognition. Ethan looked peaceful beside Elena. Not completed by her. Not rescued. Simply met. Vanessa approached. Elena greeted her warmly. "I have wanted to meet you," she said. Vanessa was surprised. "Why? You built the partnership model for the clinic. My team did most of the work." "That is not what they said." Vanessa glanced at Ethan. He gave no sign that he had discussed her. Elena continued. "The contract protects patient access even if ownership changes. Most people do not think that far ahead. Some of us learn late." Elena studied her with the gentle attention of a physician. Late is still earlier than never. The sentence was not forgiveness. It was kindness. Vanessa almost could not bear it. A coordinator called Elena toward the clinic entrance. She touched Ethan's arm before leaving. The gesture was small, natural. Vanessa watched her go. "She is remarkable," Vanessa said. "Yes. Do you love her?" Ethan looked toward Elena. He did not answer immediately. "I am learning how." The honesty pierced deeper than certainty. Vanessa looked out at the sea. "I used to think love was proven by what someone could give me." Ethan stood beside her, leaving careful space between them. "And now I think it is proven by what you refuse to take from them." Wind lifted a strand of hair across her face. She tucked it behind her ear. "I took your belief, your time, your confidence. You did not take all of it." "No," she smiled sadly. "I tried." A long silence followed. Vanessa reached into her coat pocket. Inside was the wedding ring she had removed at the restaurant. She had recovered it years later from her mother, who had quietly taken it from the table. Vanessa had carried it for months, uncertain why. Now she placed it in Ethan's palm. He stared at the thin band. "I thought about asking for another chance," she said. His fingers closed slightly around the ring. "I know. I rehearsed what I would say. I imagined telling you Adrian manipulated me, that I was frightened, that I was young. All of those things may be true, but none of them excuse what I did. No." She looked toward Elena in the distance. "I do not want to become another person asking you to abandon yourself for her needs." Ethan turned the ring between his fingers. Vanessa breathed slowly. "So I am not asking." Something softened in his expression. Not romantic love. Respect. It was less than she once had. More than she deserved. "Why give this to me?" he asked. "Because I used it as a weapon." She looked at the ring. "You should decide what happens to it." Ethan considered the sea. Then he stepped toward the seawall and held the ring over the water. Vanessa's breath caught, but he did not throw it. Instead, he returned it to her. "It is not mine," he said. She stared at the circle in her palm. "It represents our marriage." "No, it represents the moment you ended it." The distinction settled inside her. "What should I do with it?" "That is no longer my decision." Ethan walked toward the ceremony. Vanessa remained beside the sea. For a while, she listened to the waves. Then she placed the ring on the stone wall. A little girl running past noticed it. "Is that yours?" the child asked. Vanessa looked at the band shining in the sunlight. "It used to be." "Did you lose it?" Vanessa smiled. "Yes." The girl waited, perhaps expecting Vanessa to pick it up. Instead, Vanessa took the ring and later delivered it to a charity auction supporting the new medical center. It sold for far more than its original value. The money funded emergency care for families who could not pay. Something that had once symbolized possession became service. For the first time, Vanessa felt the past loosen its grip. Not disappear. Not forgive. Loosen. At the ceremony, Ethan stood beside Elena while children cut a ribbon across the clinic doors. Vanessa applauded with the crowd. She did not imagine herself in Elena's place. She did not wish the moment were hers. She allowed it to belong to the people who had built it. That was how regret began to change. Not by vanishing, by becoming useful. Part 8. What she finally said a year after the acquisition. Sterling Global held its annual leadership summit at the Grand Marlowe. The same hotel. The same painted clouds. The same chandeliers beneath which Vanessa had mocked Ethan before learning his name controlled the room. This time, she arrived alone. No diamonds. No carefully rehearsed entrance. She wore a dark green dress and carried a folder containing the ethical partnership report her division had spent 9 months preparing. Ethan had asked her to speak. At first, Vanessa assumed he wanted data. Then she saw the title assigned to her session. The cost of looking away. The ballroom filled with executives from companies across the world. People who had survived scandals. People who had caused them. People who believed ethics belonged in annual reports rather than decisions. Vanessa waited near the stage. Her hands were cold. Ethan approached. "You can change the title," he said. "No, you do not have to discuss anything personal." "I know." His gaze remained on her face. "Are you sure?" Vanessa looked toward the table where she had once placed their ring. The furniture had changed, but she knew the exact location. Yes. When her name was announced, applause followed. Not thunderous. Respectful. Vanessa stepped onto the stage. For a moment, the lights blinded her. Then the room came into focus. Ethan sat in the front row beside Elena. Maya and Luis were nearby. Mr. Delaney sat farther back. Vanessa placed her notes on the lectern. She did not open them. "Years ago," she began, "I believed failure was something visible." The room quieted. "I thought it looked like an old car, a modest salary, a small apartment, or a dream that had not yet attracted applause." Ethan did not move. "I was wrong." Vanessa's voice trembled once. She continued, "Failure can wear silk. It can sit in executive offices. It can receive promotions while ignoring the people paying the cost." Behind her, the screen displayed photographs from the Harrington collapse. Unfinished buildings. Closed sites. Workers waiting for wages. "I did not steal from my company. I did something easier to excuse. I chose not to ask questions because the answers threatened the life I wanted." Several executives lowered their eyes. "I trusted status more than character. Noise more than discipline. Appearance more than truth." She looked toward Ethan. "And I once humiliated a good man because his success had not arrived on my schedule." A breath moved through the room. Ethan's expression remained still, but Elena turned slightly toward him. Vanessa did not reveal details. She did not seek sympathy. "I believed I left him because he had no future. Years later, I discovered that I had simply lacked the courage to see one." Silence. No one reached for a glass. No one whispered. The most dangerous decisions in business are often not made by monsters. They are made by frightened people who want to protect their position, their comfort, or the version of themselves reflected in someone else's approval. Vanessa finally opened the folder. She presented the reforms. Independent oversight. Employee reporting protections. Community impact requirements. Executive accountability. But the room remembered the confession more than the charts. At the end, she closed the folder. "Regret is not redemption," she said. "Regret is only the moment we stop lying about what we did. Redemption begins with what we choose after that." She stepped away from the lectern. For half a second, the ballroom remained silent. Then Ethan stood. The sound of his chair moving seemed to release the room. Others rose with him. The applause began. Vanessa looked at Ethan. He did not smile broadly. He gave one slow nod. It was enough. After the summit, guests left beneath a sky clear of rain. Vanessa stood on the hotel terrace, looking down at the street. Ethan joined her. "Elena left?" Vanessa asked. "She has an early flight. To somewhere dangerous?" "Usually." They stood in silence. Inside, staff cleared glasses from the tables. "I meant what I said," Vanessa told him. "I know. I used to imagine this moment differently." "How?" I thought I would apologize perfectly, and you would understand everything, and somehow understanding would erase consequences. Ethan leaned against the stone railing. And now I know consequences may be the only reason apologies become honest. He looked toward the city. Vanessa gathered her courage. Did you ever think we would be here? No. Do you remember the night I left? Yes. Every word. Not every word. She nodded. I do. Ethan turned to her. Vanessa's eyes shone, but she did not look away. I said you would never become the kind of man a woman could be proud of. You did. I was wrong. Yes. She almost laughed through the pain. You make forgiveness difficult. I forgave you years ago. Her breath stopped. What? I forgave you before I bought Sterling. Then why? Forgiveness does not mean returning. The words were gentle. Final. Ethan continued. For a long time, I thought healing would happen when you regretted leaving. I imagined success forcing you to see me. Vanessa listened. But when success came, it did not change what happened. It only showed me I had spent too much of my life asking another person to confirm my worth. He looked at her fully. You did not leave because I had no future. You left because you could not see one. Vanessa closed her eyes. The sentence she had known was coming still found the deepest place. When she opened them, Ethan's face held no anger, only truth. And I became cruel because I thought love without admiration was humiliation, she said. What do you think now? Vanessa looked through the terrace doors at the emptying ballroom. I think love without respect is not love. Ethan nodded. Below them, a black car stopped at the entrance. His driver stepped out. Vanessa knew the conversation was ending. Are you happy? She asked. Yes. With Elena? With my life. The answer was larger. She smiled. I am glad. And for once, she did not resent the words after speaking them. Ethan extended his hand. Vanessa looked at it. Years earlier, she had left his hand alone beside a wedding ring. Now she placed hers in it. Their handshake was brief, warm, a farewell between two people who no longer needed to injure each other to prove the past had mattered. Ethan released her. He walked toward the doors. Vanessa watched him cross the ballroom. He did not look back. She did not call his name. Outside, the car door opened. Ethan entered. The vehicle disappeared into the city. Vanessa remained on the terrace until the street was empty. She had imagined regret as a fire. Something dramatic. Something consuming. But real regret was quieter. It was standing beneath the same chandeliers where she had once destroyed a man's dignity and understanding that he had rebuilt it without her. It was knowing he had forgiven her but would never again belong to her. It was accepting that love could survive in memory while ending in life. Vanessa placed one hand over her heart. It hurt, but for the first time, the pain contained no demand. She let him go, not because she had stopped regretting, because she had finally learned that regret did not grant ownership over what had been lost. Part 9. The Life After Regret. 3 years later, Vanessa returned to the neighborhood where she grew up. The narrow houses remained. Laundry moved between balconies. Children rode bicycles along cracked sidewalks. A grocery store occupied the corner where her mother once counted coins beneath fluorescent lights. Vanessa had purchased the abandoned library across the street. Not for investment, not for publicity. She transformed it into a training center for women returning to work after divorce, financial hardship, or domestic abuse. The center offered legal support, childcare, technology courses, and small business grants. Its name was Second Light. Vanessa did not place her own name on the building. On opening day, her mother stood beside her beneath a simple blue ribbon. You have changed, her mother said. Vanessa watched women enter with children, folders, and cautious hope. I had to. Her mother touched her arm. Do you still think about him? Vanessa did not pretend to misunderstand. Sometimes. Do you still love him? Vanessa watched sunlight move across the library windows. Yes. The answer no longer frightened her. Love did not always ask to be acted upon. Sometimes it remained as gratitude for the person one had failed to cherish. Sometimes it became a standard for how not to treat others. Sometimes it became a quiet ache beside a life still worth living. Ethan married Elena that autumn. The wedding was private. 40 guests gathered at a restored lighthouse overlooking the northern coast. There were no magazine contracts, no helicopters, no diamond sponsors. Maya served as Ethan's witness. Louise cried before the ceremony began. Samuel complained about the wind and then cried harder than Louise. Ethan wore a dark suit. Elena carried wildflowers. When she reached him, she took both his hands. There was no applause until after they kissed. Vanessa learned about the marriage from a handwritten card. Ethan and Elena had invited her. She had declined, not from bitterness, from wisdom. Instead, she sent a gift to Elena's medical foundation. The note contained one sentence: "May the life you build together protect the people within it." Elena replied weeks later, "Thank you for helping him become free of a past neither of us needs to fear." Vanessa read the lines several times. Then she placed the card in a drawer beside the old wedding photograph. She did not hide it face down. North Star continued to grow, but Ethan changed the company's structure, transferring significant ownership to employees. He created scholarships for warehouse workers and drivers. He refused several opportunities to enter politics. When journalists asked about the humiliation that supposedly fueled his rise, he never named Vanessa. "Pain may start an engine," he said in one rare interview. "It should not be allowed to choose the destination." The quote appeared on the wall of Second Light. Vanessa saw it every morning, not as punishment, as guidance. One winter evening, the center hosted its first graduation. 32 women crossed a small stage to receive certificates. One had started a catering company. Another had become a software analyst. A third had secured housing after leaving an abusive marriage. Vanessa stood near the back of the room while families applauded. A woman named Rachel approached after the ceremony. "You probably do not remember me," she said. Vanessa did. Rachel had once been an administrative assistant at Harrington and Vale. Vanessa had dismissed one of her concerns about Adrian's contracts. "I remember." Rachel smiled cautiously. "I hated you for a long time." Vanessa accepted the words. "I understand. But when Harrington reopened, you recommended me for the compliance team. You were qualified. You also wrote a letter admitting you had ignored my warning." Vanessa said nothing. Rachel looked around the center. "My daughter is taking classes here now." A teenage girl stood near the refreshments, laughing with friends. Rachel's eyes filled. "I wanted you to know that one terrible version of you did not get the final word." Vanessa felt something shift inside her. For years, she had believed redemption meant becoming worthy of Ethan's return. Now she understood. Redemption was not being chosen again by the person she had hurt. It was choosing differently when the same selfishness returned. It was telling the truth when silence offered safety. It was building doors for people she once would not have noticed. Outside, snow began to fall. After everyone left, Vanessa turned off the center's lights one room at a time. She paused in the training hall. 32 empty chairs faced the stage. On the whiteboard, someone had written, "Your life is not over because someone failed to see your value." Vanessa stood beneath the words. Once, she had been the person who failed to see. That truth would always belong to her. But it no longer had to be the only truth. She locked the building and stepped outside. Across the street, the grocery store windows glowed. A young mother counted coins beside a shopping basket. Vanessa crossed the road and quietly paid the remaining amount before the woman could protest. Then she walked home through the snow. Her apartment was modest now, warm, filled with books, plants, and photographs of the center. On the mantel stood no trophies, no wedding portraits, no evidence of borrowed status. Vanessa made tea and sat beside the window. The city lights stretched toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond them, Ethan was living a life she would never share. He might be reading beside Elena. He might be reviewing a late report. He might be standing at a window of his own, entirely unaware that Vanessa was thinking of him. That was all right. She no longer needed to occupy his mind to prove she had mattered. She no longer confused possession with love. Vanessa opened the drawer beside her chair. Inside lay the fountain pen box Ethan had given her years earlier. The pen itself belonged to him, but the empty box remained. She ran her thumb across the velvet lining. Once, she saw emptiness as humiliation. Now she saw space. Space for truth. Space for change. Space for a life not built around being admired. Vanessa closed the drawer. Her phone displayed a message from Rachel. "Thank you for tonight. My daughter wants to volunteer next week." Vanessa replied, "We would be honored to have her." She placed the phone down. Snow gathered along the window ledge. The room was silent, but not lonely. For years, Vanessa had believed her greatest punishment was losing the man who became a billionaire. She had been wrong. Her greatest punishment was understanding that Ethan's money had never been the miracle. The miracle was the patience she mocked. the loyalty she used, the quiet strength she mistook for weakness. She had lived beside a remarkable man before the world knew his name, and she had made him feel small. That knowledge never disappeared, but neither did the lessons it created. Ethan had not built North Star to make Vanessa regret leaving. He had built it when he finally stopped needing her to stay. He had not become powerful to punish her. He became powerful when her opinion lost the right to define him. And Vanessa's redemption did not begin when she saw him beneath the chandeliers. It began when she understood that regret alone was still centered on herself. Real change began later. In the construction offices, in the unpaid invoices, in the clinic by the sea, in the women who entered Second Light carrying broken histories and left carrying plans. Vanessa lifted her tea. In the glass, her reflection looked older, softer, honest. She whispered the words she had once been too proud to say. I was wrong. No one applauded. No one forgave her from across the room. No lost husband returned. The words simply existed. And that was enough. Outside, the city continued without waiting for anyone's regret. Cars moved through the snow. Lights turned off in office towers. Somewhere, behind one of those windows, someone was still working after everyone else had stopped believing. Vanessa smiled. Not because the past had changed. Because she had. Ethan had not become successful to win her back. He became successful when he finally chose himself. And she did not find peace by getting him back. She found peace when she finally learned to let him go. She regretted everything. But regret was no longer the end of her story. It was where her honesty began.